and it's something that Jews do a lot of eating, but we especially do eating on Shabbos. So we're going to talk a little bit about all the different foods that we eat on Shabbos and what's their spiritual what's the spiritual ramification, and what do we sort of get from eating food on Shabbos. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Shabbos itself. Everything has a spiritual ramification. So one of the first things we do on Shabbos is we make Kiddush. So Kiddush is on wine. And the reason why we make Kiddush on wine is because we know that the very first Shabbos was just after the...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or can everyone, are you breaking up, or is it just on mine?
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Must be my outdoors. Sorry. My problem.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so here we go. I'll make myself a little bigger now. Okay, here we go. So I could look at myself a little bit more. So we're talking about Kiddush. Kiddush is the first food that we're supposed to eat on Shabbos is Kiddush, which is we drink wine. Wine is made out of grapes. And the reason why we make Kiddush on Friday night, it's brought down that is a correction for the original sin. As Jews, we know we don't believe in original sin per se, but we do speak a lot about it, about the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, it was just before Shabbos, where they had one mitzvah not to eat from the tree of knowledge, and they couldn't hold themselves back, so they ate from the tree of knowledge, and as a result, they were kicked out of the Gan Eden, and the man had to go and work, the woman had to have babies with great suffering, and the serpent had to crawl on its belly for the rest of time. So this was the punished for that. So all of Shabbos, a lot of what Shabbos is, especially the beginning of Shabbos, is a correction for the sin of Gan Eden, the sin that took place, the original sin, the first sin of humanity of Adam and Eve. And that is why women, right at the start of Shabbos, they light the Shabbos candles, because the women played a role, just like the men did, in the original sin. So they took away the light of the world. So they need to re-infuse the world with light. And that's why the woman is the one that lights the candles. By the way, if a woman is not home, then a man has to light the candles. So it's for the man and the woman. It's correction of the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge. Now, it's called the Chet Eitz Hadas. And then there was another sin, which was another aspect of the very same sin, and that is that we make Kiddush, we try to correct it by drinking Kiddush at the beginning of Shabbos. So on Friday night, the man's job is now to make a blessing on a cup of wine. Now, why is it that we drink wine? Why doesn't he drink apple juice or orange juice or some other drink? So it's brought down in many holy books that the original sin again it wasn't just any ordinary fruit that was on the tree of knowledge, but it was the grapes. It was a vineyard that Adam and Eve took grapes from. And they drank, they made some wine and they got drunk. So to correct the original sin, we have to drink wine at the beginning of Shabbos to fix that and to elevate the original sin. So here we have it. The woman lights the candles and the man drinks wine. Why they gave this one that and that one that, I'm not 100% sure. But the woman's job is to light candles. Jewish mothers have been lighting candles for thousands of years as a result of that. Men have been making Kiddush. both as a correction of the original sin. Now, if you look carefully at the Kiddush ceremony, the Kiddush ritual, the liturgy of the Kiddush, you'll see we start the Kiddush with the word Yom HaShishi Vayachulu HaShamayim. And so if you look carefully, Yom HaShishi really is a word that comes from the previous verse. It says, Vayi'edev Vayivoka Yom Rishon. It was an evening, it was a day, the first day. Vayi'edev Vayivoka Yom Sheni. It was the second day of creation, the third day of creation. And the final day of creation, it says, Vayi'edev Vayivoka Yom HaShishi. And then it says, Vayachulu HaShamayim V'aretz V'chol Tzavam. That's where the Kiddush starts from. But many have the custom to say right at the beginning of the Kiddush, they say, Vayi'edev Vayivoka Yom HaShishi, or some just start Yom HaShishi. Yom HaShishi, that's the first word of the Kiddush. Why does it start? Why do we start with that? Again, it's a mystical thing because the Yom HaShishi, the first two letters of that is Yud and a Hey, which we all know what's special about Yud and Hey. It's God's name. So we start off to correct the sin of the eating from the tree of knowledge, of the Chet Eitz Hadas. What do? The first thing of Kiddush, we infuse godliness into the world with the words Yom HaShishi. Yom HaShishi stands for there's a Yud and a Hey, which is God's name. And then the next two words of the next verse is Vayachulu HaShamayim. Also the first two letters is Vav and Hey. So we have Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. That is the ineffable name of God. We know there's a name of God that you're not allowed to say, and that's brought down in the holy books. That is the name Yud, Hey, and then a Vav, and then a Hey. We don't pronounce it. We don't say it. There's an organization called the Witnesses. It's a Christian organization, and they use that name as part of their name. It's called the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I'm not going to say what the word is, but because we as Jews, we're not allowed to say that. So a lot of people don't know that you're not supposed to say that name of God. It's called the ineffable name of God. It's the Shem HaMufarash. It's the closest name to the essence of God, and it's Yud, a Hey, and a Vav, and a Hey, and that is right at the beginning of the Kiddush. So we sort of hint God's name. There's a real deep Kabbalistic concept right at the beginning of the Kiddush, and that name is not allowed to be said. It was only said at certain times in the temple. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, when he would enter into the Holy of Holies, he would pronounce that name. And when the people in the courtyard heard the name of God being pronounced, they would fall on their knees and bow down. And they would bow down to when they heard God's name being said. That is said many times on Yom Kippur in the synagogue. You see many times we bow down on Yom Kippur. It's to commemorate that. Also by the Birkat Kohanim, when the Kohanim would bless the congregation, they would also use that name. We don't do that today. Today they don't do it for numerous reasons. We're not sure exactly on the pronunciation. We know those are the four letters, but we're not certain about the pronunciation of the letter, which was a secret that the Kohanim had, which they would pass on from generation to generation. For some reason, that secret's not come down to us today, so we don't know exactly how to pronounce the name. So the Kohanim don't say that name, but the name is Yud and a Hey and a Vav. That's right at the beginning of Kiddush. Yom HaShishi, Vayachulu HaShamayim. That's how we start immediately saying the Kiddush. So that's the name of God that shows up right there. Now, there are many other mystical concepts that are associated with that food, the drink of wine. If you look at the Kiddush carefully, the letters of the Kiddush, the words of the Kiddush, right? How many words are in the Kiddush prayer? You give a look, the first paragraph of Yom HaShishi V'Yachulu HaShamayim. If you have a chance, you'll count it. You'll see there are 35 words in the first paragraph of the Kiddush. And then in the second paragraph of the Kiddush, the second bracha that we say thereafter, that also has 35 words in it. So altogether, how many words does the Kiddush have? 35 at the beginning of the first paragraph, 35 in the second paragraph. Altogether is how much? Adds up to 70. So there are 70 words in the Kiddush prayer. That's interesting because the Kiddush is to commemorate which day of the week? The seventh day of the week, right? So we hint to it because if you take the number 70, you add 7 plus 0 equals 70. 7 plus 0 equals 7. So that's a reminder of the seventh day of the week. So it has the numerical value of 7. I'm going to show you that everything on all the foods that we eat and everything we do at the Shabbos table are all associated with the number 7. We just said that the Kiddush, which we commemorate the seventh day, has 70 words in it, which is the magical number of 7. What do we make the Kiddush on? Kiddush, we make it on wine, right? What's the Hebrew word for wine, anyone? The Hebrew word for wine is yayin. Yayin is the Hebrew word for wine. Now here we go again. If you take the Hebrew letters, yayin is made up of 3 letters, Yud, and Nun. Yud is a numerical value of 10. So 2 times Yud is 20. So we have a numerical value of 20. And the Hebrew letter of Nun has the numerical value of 50. So if you add up 20 plus 50 equals 70. 7 plus 0 equals 7. So we have in Yayin, likewise, if you just take Yayin is 10, take off the zeros. So you have 1. And the second Yud is also 10. So take off the zeros, 1 plus 1. And the Nun is 50. Take off the 0, you have 5. So it adds up 1 plus 1 plus 5 equals 7, right? So there you go. It's the same thing, actually. I'm just saying it in a different way. So the number Yayin adds up to the number 70, which is equals to 7. So again, Kiddush gives you the magical number of 7, and Yayin gives you the number of 7. What else do we have to eat on Shabbos? What do Jews eat for Shabbos? I'm going to speak about shortly some of the important things we need to eat. But on the Friday night, especially where we see the number 7 is the big theme over here, right? Because 7 is the seventh day of the week. It's the Shabbos, the day of rest. Kol Hashvi and Chaviv and everything which is 7 is beloved. What do we eat Shabbos Friday night? We're supposed to eat. It's brought down in the holy books. Very important to eat fish on Shabbos. That's a Jewish custom to eat fish, gefilte fish especially, or the Sfardim eat some other kind of fish. But we eat fish on a Friday night. It's old, ancient custom. What's the Hebrew word for fish? Anybody? The Hebrew word for fish? I know you're all muted, so I'm just...
Dag.
Dag. Oh, dag. Dag. What's a dag? Is a fish. Yeah, a dag. So let's look at the letters. What the 2 Hebrew letters is fish made out of? It's made of dag, which is Dalid, and Gimel. Dalid is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, so it has a numerical value of 4. Gimel is the 3rd letter of the Hebrew alphabet, numerical value of 3. 4 plus 3 equals 7. So far, everything is chiming perfectly with this Kabbalistic notion. The gematria of the letters adds up to 7. What else are we supposed to eat at the Shabbos table? It's customary to eat, especially those that are not vegetarian. We eat meat, chicken. I know they call it chicken meat, but they eat chicken. People eat chicken on Friday night, or they eat a nice roast or whatever. And Jews have been eating meat. It says that they brought down the code of Jewish law that you're supposed to eat fish and meat on Shabbos. What's the Hebrew word for meat? Anybody? The Hebrew word is basar. Basar is meat. Yeah, so let's look at the numbers for basar. So let's get rid of all the zeros again, because that makes it easier for us. So you take the letter bet, is numerical value of 2, right? Shin is 300. So we get rid of the zeros, so we have 3. So we have 2 plus 3, right? And Resh is the numerical value of 200. Take off the zeros from 200, you have 2. So you have, what do we have? 2 plus 3, 5 plus 2 is 7. So again, Basar adds up to the grand total of 7. So everything here is 7. I see that Kim is saying that there are 7 ingredients in the challah. So Kim, maybe you could tell us what the 7 ingredients are. I'll have more for my class. Kim, what are the 7 ingredients?
There's yeast, water, sugar, oil, egg, flour.
Yeah, so you go 7 right there. You have to stop there. I don't care what else you got in your challah.
No, that's all. I checked my recipe just to make sure.
Yeah. So there's 7 ingredients in the challah, right? And if you make it with 7 braids, you're God gewaldig. Right? I don't know. Does anyone make it with 7 braids? I guess they do. Yeah. So there you have it. You have it. All the foods of Shabbos are tied in with that mystical, Kabbalistic, magical number of 7. And if you go to a shul that has a number 770, that's also very, very special. So that's the number 7 on Shabbos. So there are different foods that we're supposed to eat on Shabbos, and they all bring out different spiritual experiences that we all have on the Shabbos. We all know that one of the, like I said before, the mitzvah to eat fish. But the Ashkenazic Jews especially, we always ate a fish called gefilte fish. What does gefilte fish mean? Gefilte fish means it's a filling, whatever, but what is gefilte fish? Gefilte fish is a different fishes that we take together and we chop them up and we make we grind it, right? What's that? We grind the fish, and we have gefilte fish. So the question is, why do Jews eat that fish called gefilte fish? So some things are just things historically. They used to ask the question. There's one lady that had a family had a tradition that the mother always used to cut off the head of the fish and the tail, and the daughter says, "Oh, my mother also cut it off," and everybody starts saying, "In our house." Where did this custom came from? So they went back, farther back. They found out they had a small pot and they couldn't fit the whole fish in. So they used to cut the head and the tail. So that's sort of the practical reason. And there was also a practical reason for gefilte fish. The Jews were poor and many of the shtetelach. So it was easier to get minced fish, you know what I mean? A little bit from this fish, a little bit from that fish. And nobody knew what fish you were putting in. And that was because that was the reason it was poor. But there's also a reason that's brought down in halacha, in Jewish law, as to why Jews eat gefilte fish. Many people don't know that there are 39 types of prohibitions on Shabbos of things we're not allowed to do. It says on the Shabbos we're not allowed to do any work. Now, there are people that think that work means hard work, like labor. There's one definition of labor, but the Jew oral tradition tells us that the real definition of working on Shabbos is not you're allowed to move a heavy sofa from one side of the room to the other, or a heavy table you can pick up and move from one side to the other. So it's not really about labor. What is forbidden on Shabbos is not labor, because we're commemorating God's resting from creation. Now God, we know, he never labored. For God to create the world, he just said a few words, let there be light, let there be this, let there be that, let there be vegetation, let there be the sun and the moon. Everything came into place because God just spoke. So there was no major labor involved. So what is the real definition of work on Shabbos? The word that's used in the Torah is lo saseh melacha. Melacha. Melacha is a skilled work. And it says that we learn out from the Beit HaMikdash how they built the Mishkan, the tabernacle. A melacha is a talented, meaningful, a work which accomplishes something, right? So God, when he worked for 6 days, doesn't mean he worked hard, but he built a world. So malacha means a skilled work, something that you are fixing something, you are correcting something, you're doing something to change the world. So we on Shabbos, we're not allowed to do things which change the world. And in the code of Jewish law, and in the Gemara and the Talmud, it speaks at great length what is considered work on Shabbos. So it speaks about all 39 kinds of work, of creative activity. That's the word I was looking for. Creative activity is what is forbidden on Shabbos, not hard work. What is considered creative activity? So the Talmud goes through it and it speaks about like different things that they did in those days, especially like a farmer's work, right? He sows, he plows, he reaps, he sorts the grain, he cleanses it, he cleans it, he threshes it, he bakes it, right? All those activities of the bread. And in the olden days also, there used to be, they would catch an animal and they would prepare the skins, and how they would do it, those were considered creative. Building, starting a fire, those are all considered, from the very beginning of time, that was considered a creative activity, like creating nothing, something. As much as a human being is able to do it with the different things that God gave us, different abilities and different materials that God gave us in this world. So one of the malachot of Shabbat is you're allowed to eat on Shabbos. Obviously, it's a mitzvah. And you can also prepare your food for Shabbos. But there is certain things you can't plant. Okay, for instance, you can't drop some seeds. You can't water the garden on Shabbos. Even though someone said, "What's watering the garden?" It's easy. Not watering the garden. You're making creative activity, right? You can't plow a field on Shabbos, which includes also you can't go digging on Shabbos. That's forbidden. You can't write on Shabbos because that's also it's a creative activity. So one of the forms of work on Shabbos is that you can't take your grain, let's say, and separate the good grain from the shells. Okay, that is a form of creative activity, and that trickles down to even in the kitchen, that you're not allowed to take out, let's say, the pits from the watermelon on Shabbos. Okay, you're allowed to eat the watermelon and spit out the pits, but you can't go and like cleanse it and prepare the food in that way. That is considered one of the 39 kinds of work on Shabbos. A lot of people don't know that. And even eating fish, you're not allowed to take debone the fish and then serve the fish. You have to do before Shabbat if you want to do that. But on Shabbos itself, you're not supposed to take the fish out. You're allowed to put the fish, if it's in your mouth, you have a bone, obviously you can take it out afterwards. But you can't prepare the food in that kind of way. There are a lot of different complicated laws involved in that. But one of them is regarding fish, that you can't remove the bones from the fish. A lot of people don't know that. So that's why, in order that it shouldn't be complicated on Friday night when people ate the fish, so the mothers knew that they don't want the family to sit around pulling bones out of their mouth, which is not very good etiquette, right? Whatever. So that basically you're allowed to take the bone, hold it in your hand, eat the fish off the bone, but it's not mentioned to do that. So they came up with this idea. They invented a fish called gefilte fish, where they take a little bit pike and they take a little bit whitefish or carp. Yeah, and there's different arguments as what's the best fish for gefilte fish, but I think pike and what else, and carp and whitefish, those are the fishes they use, I think, for the so they use those fishes and they mince it, they grind, and then once it's minced, there's no bones in the fish, it's boneless. So you don't have to deal with by the table, the rabbis don't have to start saying, hey, you shouldn't be eating fish that way. No one gets embarrassed. So that's why we eat the gefilte fish. That's what we get That's one of the reasons it's brought down why gefilte fish was invented and became the popular fish in the Jewish homes. That doesn't mean you can't eat a good piece of salmon or another fish, but the old days they used to eat all these like bony fish, like carp. It's like that's what carp is. It's like it moans all over the place, right? So that's why. So he came up with the idea of gefilte fish. I'm just giving you a little bit of a background on this particular food that you eat on the Friday night. And then, so what did we share so far? We shared so far about the wine, a little bit about the challah that we eat. Now, the challah that we eat, it's customary to have. We call it the name for the bread that we eat on Shabbos is called challah. It's interesting that that's the name that was given for that bread, because we have to eat some bread to make it consider it a proper meal. You're supposed to eat bread, but why is it called challah? Where does the name challah come from? In some other places they call it bilkalach, like little breads, or the South Africans call it what do they call it?
Kitka.
Huh?
Kitka.
Kitka, right? Kitka, yeah, right. They call it kit. Thank you very much. They call it a kitka. There are different names for it, but the most accepted name in the history is the name challah. A challah is not actually the name of the bread. Challah there's a mitzvah that when you bake a larger quantity of bread, at least 5 pounds of bread, when you make it with flour and water, Torah says that you have to give a little bit of it to the Kohanim, to the priests, because the priests, they didn't have their own farm and anything, they were working in the temple. So every Jewish person had to give a piece of the bread, always to think about someone else. You're making some bread for yourself, they would put aside a little piece of they take a little piece of the dough and they give it away to the Kohen, so the Kohen should have also a little bread. And that bread that was given to the Kohen, Basil, you're there, you're a Kohen, right? So we'll send you our dough. I know you don't want the physical dough, you want the real dough, right? I know the Kohanim, they like the dough. So we take a little piece, like a handful of that bread, we put it aside and we give it to the Kohen. Today, the custom is that we just put it aside. We don't give it to the Kohen because nobody today is pure, and there's a lot of impurity because Kohanim, they come in contact with the dead, whatever, over the centuries. So till the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, we just take that piece of bread and we burn it in the oven. That little piece of dough, we put it aside and we burn it in the oven. Okay, but one day, very shortly, Basil, you're going to get a lot of dough. Mashiach is going to come. And we're going to give you all our dough. But that is a mitzvah of generosity. That when you make your own bread, you don't just think about yourself. You think about the poor Kohen who didn't have a field in Israel, and he worked in the temple. He was like a rabbi. He was like the rabbi in the olden days. So when you eat your own bread, you put aside a little bit of dough for the rabbi, for the Kohen, and the name of that mitzvah became the name of the bread that we eat on Shabbos, because the Yiddish imam is always to put aside challah, so they called the whole thing already. They called challah, and that's why we call those breads, we call chalot. Chalot is a name, but because of the big mitzvah that was done in the making of the bread, the mitzvah of challah, and that is one of the special mitzvahs that the Jewish women were proud of. That they had, it was to do the mitzvah of challah, to give a little bit away of the challah. That's why we call it challah. But with the challah on Shabbos, it's customary to have how many challahs do we put by the table? Put that one, we put 2 challahs. Now why 2? Because one of the main reasons why we eat challah in general on the Friday night is because when the Jewish people were wandering in the wilderness, Hashem said that every day there'll be the manna that falls down from heaven. It was like bread that came down from heaven for the people to eat every single day. But on Friday, it says there was a double portion, because Hashem didn't want the people to have to go out in the field on the Sabbath and desecrate the Sabbath to go find find this special miraculous manna food. So what did Hashem do on Friday? He said, I will drop 2 portions. So in commemoration of the double portion of the manna, which fell on the Friday, we today have a double portion of bread. And that also explains why everyone knows that just when you have a challah, you're supposed to have a covering over the challah, and on the bottom you put a challah board. So of course the challah board, people think it's in order to be able to cut the bread. No. There's supposed to be a covering on top and something on the bottom, 2 layers. Because in the Torah it says that when the manna fell, first there was a layer of dew that fell, and then the manna would fall, and then there was another layer of dew that fell on top of the manna. So there was a 1 layer underneath the manna, and then another layer. So it was sandwiched between the dew, the manna. This miraculous bread was between 2 layers of dew. And that is why today, to commemorate that, we put 1 layer underneath, which is represented by the challah board, and we put a covering over the bread, which is the challah cover. Okay, it's a big industry. Thank God for the Torah. So you have to have a challah board underneath and a challah covering on top of how many challahs? Top of the 2 challahs that we have to commemorate the 2 portions of the manna. There's another reason that's given for the challah cover, only the challah cover, as to why spiritually we have to have that covering, because it's brought down that really bread is the main staple of life. Lechem levav enish yisad, the bread is the bread that satisfies the heart of a person. Like if you don't eat bread, you don't really feel really full, but bread was always considered the main staple of life. And that's why at every meal, the first thing that you're supposed to eat in honor of the bread is to make the motzi, the bracha motzi lechem in haaretz at the beginning of the meal, and that becomes the main thing. Once you say motzi, you don't have to say any blessings on anything else, because that is considered a bona fide meal when you have bread. So bread is considered the holiest of holy, and it is the main staple of life. But on Shabbat, there's an exception, because remember we said the men need to make a bracha to correct the sin of the original sin, and so we make it. The first thing we do is we make the kiddush, right? Which is borei pri hagafen. Which really, technically, the borei pri hagafen should be after the hamotzi lechem in haaretz. Bread should come before the wine, but we do it because to consecrate the Shabbat, we drink a cup of wine like pre-meal. It's like the bar, you go to a big wedding, they serve the drinks for the meal. So this is a special thing on Shabbat. You have the wine before the bread. But out of deference, out of honor to the bread, we don't want the bread to see the meal. So we sort of cover the bread to show respect, as they say, not to hurt the feelings of the bread. Can you imagine? The Torah is worried about not to hurt the feelings of the bread, because the bread really should be first. So the bread is shouting out, I'm bread, I should be first. So we cover it up so it can't see what's going on. It doesn't know what's happening. We make a quick kiddush, and then we eat the bread, not to hurt the feelings of bread. There's a famous story along those lines. There was a rabbi in the house, and I think it was Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. He was the head of the Muslim movement. It was about 150, 200 years ago. He was in a house, and he was invited to the house, and he sees the husband is being very derogatory to his wife. Sometimes it happens on a Friday night, and the husband thinks he's the big balabas, the big guy in the house. He's telling his wife, "Go here, go there, go there," and he's, "Hey, what would you do? Hey, look, you burnt the fish, you burnt this, you burnt that. What's going on?" And the rabbi is sitting there. He doesn't know where to put himself because his husband is being so rude to his wife. The rabbi is sitting there. He's a famous rabbi, and he's watching this happen. So he takes the challah, and he takes the challah covering, and he takes it off the challah. So the guy, the host says, "What are you doing, Rabbi? I'm not a big rabbi, but it has to be covered." He puts the covering back on. The rabbi says, "No, I was just uncovered." So the guy puts it back, and Rabbi, everybody knows in the code of Jewish law, it says you're supposed to cover the challah. Rabbi asks him, tell me, do you know why you're supposed to cover the challah? So yeah, of course, because the bread's supposed to go first, and we don't want to hurt the feelings of the bread. So Rabbi says, you are worried about the feelings of a piece of bread, and you're not worried about the feelings of your wife? Forget about covering your bread. You don't have any practical decency not to embarrass your wife in front of everybody. The Rabbi taught him a lesson. In Judaism, we're so sensitive about feelings. We're sensitive, even a piece of bread shouldn't be embarrassed. Rabbi says, think about your wife. How much respect you have to show her on a Friday night, and that you won't do. But for the bread, you worry about. He says you can uncover the bread. Anyways, that's quite a nice story, a takeaway. So there's two reasons why we cover the bread. One is to remind ourselves of the manna that was covered with the dew. That's why we cover the bread. And the other reason is not to embarrass the bread, because bread should be first. We put a covering. Now you think that what's the difference? Two nice reasons, but there actually is a difference in halacha. Yes. Why would there be a difference based on which reason we're covering the bread? So when they came up with coverings of the challah, someone said, let's put a clear piece of plastic or a clear piece of something, on top of it, or a piece of glass on top of it, right? Are we allowed to cover the challah with a clear piece of plastic as opposed? So it depends. If the reason is like the dew, right? The dew is see-through, right? Then the challah covering would be good to just cover it with a clear piece of plastic. But if the reason is that the challah shouldn't see what's going on, right? It should be sort of blocked out. Then you have to have, you can't get away with a clear piece of plastic. The challah cover needs to be as it is today. A lot of them come with plastic, but there's a piece inside that covers it up. For that, it's not enough that it's a see-through or a net. Even some people have like a challah cover with a net, right? That would be okay according to the reason that says it's for the dew. But according to the reason that says that the challah shouldn't see, as if it could see, but if it shouldn't see, or we shouldn't see the challah at the time, so then it has to be a complete blockage, a complete opaque covering. And that is actually the custom most people do. But if you cover it with something else, I'm sure you can find the rabbi who'll tell you it's okay, but the best way is to actually cover it completely, to give respect and to remind ourselves, most important, that we have to take care not just of the bread, but we also have to take care of the one that made the bread, the one that made the challah, or the one that brings home the bread. Husbands and wives have to show kavod and respect for each other. Okay, we're going to stop here. And if anyone has any questions on our food lesson today, Kabbalah of Food. There's a lot of Kabbalah on food, believe it or not. Anybody?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Basil. And we look forward to giving you the dough soon, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Rabbi, in Eastern Europe, in the shtetls that were under the mountains, and there was just a little creek. They didn't have fish during the winter, only during the summer they had a little bit. So they used to have a custom of children. And the children used to carry, they always had the same pot, right, and they took it to the bakers.
The bakers used to have in their oven all the children from the city. They used to, but that's next week's class. I'm not up to children yet. But they used to, but that was the old tradition. They used to bring it there, and I'll tell you many reasons why they used to bring it there. Because the halacha of how you can cook cholent also, like a oven which they could all bring it there together, and they would bring it there and seal it there in the baker's oven. Yeah, that was the tradition. So we'll talk about that's next week's class. Stay tuned for kugel and cholent and tzimis, and we have lots of stuff going on next week. So stay tuned. Okay, have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
We'll see you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye bye.